So we're getting back to our technology topics. And our next thing is interoperability. What is this? Why we need this? What? Alex, are you ready? Come on. So what are cross-chain bridges? How do we build them? Why are they needed? Why are they important? We're going to find out with Alex Leverington. Come on, the moderator of the session. Alex is the founder of Entropy Labs. Come on, have a seat. And he's joined by Kesem, Chief Executive Officer of Bicameral Ventures, and Dr. Huang, Founder and Chairman at DigitalTransaction. Please welcome.
Hello, everyone. Hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. I think we'll start by briefly giving you a little bit of information on who we are. My name is Alex Leverington. I was one of the original core developers for Ethereum on the C++ client, did a lot of work on the peer-to-peer network. So interoperability is a really interesting topic because it's something that we thought about a lot early on. And actually at the time, we didn't have stable things like zero-knowledge proofs. There was experimental research on it, but it wasn't something that, that we could really leverage. So over the last few years, there's been a lot of developments in blockchain and cryptography as well. So I think this year and next year, interoperability will be a really big topic because it's actually, when there is interoperability, you can have things that work together. And users may not know what's going on, and that could be a good thing. So, Kerem and Ian, if you can tell everybody just a little bit about yourselves.
All right, I'll try. Let's see. I was in engineering for a long time, and my contribution in networking basically is the old days, the FDDI network, and as well as the so-called asynchronous transfer mode ATM switch. Also the Ethernet switches and all those things, and virtual VPN and all those, and then the frame relay and all those. Anyway, I did a startup. I was the last corporate position was the vice president of engineering at Hughes Networks, and then I did my startup in Silicon Valley, and it went NASDAQ listed, IPO there. I retired, and then I come out and manage a investment trust until last year. I decided to do blockchain, and that's where I am.
Super cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Kesem. I essentially originally stumbled into the blockchain path of my career through Deloitte. I was essentially a consultant in a practice called TSNA, Technology, Strategy, and Architecture. Blockchain was this is 2014. Blockchain was mainly about Bitcoin. It was not very popular back in the day. If you were trying to talk to big enterprises about blockchain, they were like, are you trying to sell us drugs kind of a reaction? Me and my partners started the very first blockchain practice with Deloitte. It was based in Toronto in Canada. Left Deloitte in 2016 to essentially do our own startup. We thought that we could be meaning to this new and exciting domain. In 2017, we decided to forego our centralized business model, right? So selling licenses and going after clients and eat what you kill kind of a model for a public chain. We launched a public chain called Aon, AION. It's today the largest Canadian blockchain, right, measured by market cap. And interoperability is something that we profoundly care about and for. When we kind of started this crazy journey in blockchain, it was really all around how do we make this technology mainstream? And we actually think that interoperability is one of these things that need to be solved, need to be unlocked to be able to bring blockchain to the mainstream. So very happy to be here today.
Okay, great. So to start off, I want to briefly give you an image in your head, a couple of them, on interoperability. because it's a technical topic and it's not a specific one. So, so let's start with an example. What does interoperability mean? And I think one of the best examples is probably trains. So trains run on rails. And it's interesting because some trains can run on some rails and they can't run on other rails. And some rails, like the trains and the rails, have to be compatible. So if the train can run on different rails, then it's sort of portable, right? So if the wheels on the train can change and then it can work on different rails, it's a portable train. Or if you have a standard rail and then the trains can be built for that rail, you may not have interoperability, but you have a standard. So another thing is oracles. And an example of that actually used by trains is GPS. So a lot of trains have their movement and their stops are controlled by GPS. And if that signaling system wasn't standard, then it would probably be more expensive to build trains, like it is in the U.S. And then another thing is atomic swap. This is an interesting thing, and I don't know that it necessarily relates to trains. But the idea is that, at least as far as blockchain has been concerned, is that you have some asset in some system and another one in another system, like two different coins, and you want to exchange them, and you need to do it in a way that's called atomic. So basically, one hops from this owner to this owner and this one to this one, and you can't undo it. It succeeds or it fails. And having a standard system for this can be helpful because then the assets can be moved across the chains. So if you've ever heard of the term payment rails, this is where the term payment rails comes from. The credit card system and the banking system and SWIFT, the industry often calls that, rails. And so this brings me to the first question, which is a non-technical one, and that is, do we build new rails or do we build new trains? And so in the sense of blockchain, do we build a new financial system or do we build something interoperable with the financial system that we have today? So that's our first question.
All right. I guess I'm getting old now. From a business point of view, it's difficult from one abandon it completely and go to a new one. So usually, the way I look at it is that you can define the new one and the new idea and the new design, but there has to be a migration path from the past to the future. And then I can also say, it's not the future that you can control. It's if you control this migration path, you control the future. So it's rather than saying that it's so black and white, is that there's a migration path. And whoever wins on this migration path will win the future.
Yeah, I think Ian makes a very good point, right? When I think about how this business, how this domain, maybe is a better word, will mature and really manifest itself, I really think about two types of business models that we're seeing in this space. One of them is a business on a blockchain, right? Let's take an existing use case, some process that we understand, and re-engineer it so to be able to retrofit it to leverage the benefits of blockchain. Disintermediation, right? All these ugly big words. That's essentially what we're trying to do there. We're trying to take a business and now run it on a chain to some extent. If you're doing a business on a blockchain, you really, really, really care about legacy because you want to be able to service your customers in a way that they're used to. You want to be able to, have them go to a POS, a point of sale, and be able to pay with their phone, be able to work with Visa. So to Ian's point, I agree. If you're running one of these businesses on a blockchain, you really should care about hybrid models and legacy systems. However, blockchain also represent net new, the paradigm shift. And those models I tend to classify as blockchain as a business. So these systems, they tend to do away with legacy. They tend to really try to change the model of how we run businesses today and introduce something that is a net new concept. I think when Bitcoin first came to be, that was the purpose, right? We didn't care about Visa and MasterCard. We wanted to disrupt them. We didn't care about banking. We wanted to ruin banking. I think that we're going to see a very interesting path of progression as to how this industry actually matures and grows. And I think what we're going to see, IBM today commands a lot of the attention space because they're taking mature businesses and introduce a blockchain concept into them. However, there's the parallel track of the crazy folks out there doing the complete net new, and they tend to be much less sensitive to legacy. They really want to train all of us to do the net new.
Okay, great. I'm sort of, I guess I'm the moderator, but I'm pretty gung-ho on building a new financial system, and that might create some messes, but there's a lot of people interested in building interoperability. It looks like I'm not one of them, but so briefly, a few of the projects that have come about, which seem to have interoperability in mind. If you just want to do some reading that I've come across, Aeon's one, Polkadot, Ian's mentioned Komodo, POA Network, One Chain, Cosmos. These are systems that have looked to come out of the box with some kind of interoperability, whether it's like currency across multiple chains or whether it's like cross-chain execution of transactions or that effect. Another one, I think, are the ERC standards on Ethereum. NFTs are something that if there's probably one thing that is emergent that hops between chains first, it may be NFTs. So in any case, many of these are cross-chain. So is cross-chain a solution to interoperability?
Go for, your turn now.
Sure. No. I think that we all need to be honest. When we define the term, we need to be very clear about what we actually mean. So Alex just gave us a very good primer, the premise of what a lot of people think that interoperability means today, which is moving crypto asset type X to crypto asset type B, or Y, I guess. It is one small private use case of what interoperability actually means. When I think about why do people move between cryptos today, it's usually for the money aspect of it. I think I'm going to make more money in Ethereum, so I'm going to sell my Bitcoin to buy Ether and vice versa. That's kind of the gist of it. What we're trying to do, I think, is much larger in scope than just the financial implications of this technology. It's not to be able to fuel speculation and trading. It's actually to rebuild fabrics that serve us better in our everyday life. We care about decentralization because we believe it's a much better model for us, for the users. Interoperability, from the way I think about it, and what I mean when I say interoperability, is the concept of allowing the free flow of data across different technology stacks. It blows my mind that today, if I build my dApp on Ethereum and Alex happens to build his on EOS or any of the other blockchains, it's broken. It's literally engineered never to be compatible. That blows my mind. That is a sure way to guarantee that we never achieve mainstream. We never achieve maturity of the technology. Interoperability is about being able to facilitate communications in an efficient way between networks. And sure, a big use case right now is moving crypto assets, but even when I think about moving in a crypto asset, I am thinking about it not in the context of exchanging it, I am thinking about it in the context of swapping its underpinnings. So if you'll bear with me for 1 minute, Does anyone know what was the most expensive transaction cost ever on Ethereum? Anyone? No? It was around block, I think, 1,300,000, and it was $600,000 to write a transaction to the ledger. $600,000, not the value, the transaction cost. We today work with technologies that are very young in terms of the maturity stage. If you build your project and you are on a single infrastructure, you are exposed to infrastructure risk. A simple use case is being able to mitigate that infrastructure risk by being able to deploy your token or crypto asset across multitude of infrastructures. That is what interoperability actually means when I think about it. Take the single asset class and deploy it on multiple infrastructure, rather exchange cryptos between infrastructures.
Okay. Yeah.
He hit it on the nose. I'm totally in agreement with him. Interoperability is not exchange, it's not translate, it's not adoption. It's seamlessly across the board. And today's blockchain will never achieve that, even though they dress it up with fancy words, fancy terms, interoperability. Right. But it's freedom of speech. They can call it any name they want, but it's not interoperability. And the fundamental problem is because they use, this is controversial, they used open source software, open source code. The problem with open source is that you cannot use it for commercial applications. So what can you do? So you bundle it with your proprietary software and sometimes your hardware. In the case of IBM, they bundle with their other proprietary software and their own software and work in their cloud. And so does AWS. Okay? Now, for business reason, you cannot blame them. If I were running a business, I would do the same thing. But what does it mean? It going back to the 60s. There's the IBM mainframe world and then the other computer mainframe. They are not interoperable, okay? But they're hardware. And now it's become software, it become blockchain. And they use translation and exchanges as calling it interoperable. And unfortunately, the public will be misled by this term. Interoperable is you can truly send out things across the board and everybody can recognize it. I'll give you another good example. Some of you may heard of, there's Unix. You have Linux, you have Red Hat, and you have Linux. They all come from open source software, and none of them are compatible. None of them are interoperable. And even today, after so many years, and there are many geniuses that work on this. But the problem with blockchain is such a hype. It's such a hype, then people use all kinds of terms to attract the market. Just doesn't matter if it's real or true or not. That is not important. To close the business deal, to get a sales is more important. That's why the mass public must able to realize what is real and what are the pretenders and what are real. And I'm saying this because the pretenders can hurt the blockchain business at the end.
Okay, so that's great. I'm working on an application, and it is open source. These are all interesting topics for me, as I've previously worked on Ethereum, and now we're building this new application, and we go to do this, and we're like, well, what do we do? Do we build on credit cards? Do we build on bank payments? And then we're like, those are really slow. But then on the other hand, we look at everything that's out there, like, okay, well, it's fast, but it's not necessarily mature yet. And so I don't know where the future lies because it seems like this middleware part between the new applications and the old incumbent system and the new incumbent system, that's where a lot's going to happen. And personally, I'm still vying for open source. I feel like if we build something open source, then other people can build on top of it, although it may be more difficult to commercialize. And I think that that's a really important point to be made because it may not be evident here, but these points are actually like really critical for every business building in this environment. If it's blockchain or even if it's like JP Morgan coin. So a lot of the original JP Morgan coin stuff was open source, and they built it on Ethereum, and they used zero knowledge proof stuff. And so it's going to be interesting to see like which sort of wins out. So this brings me to my next question, and I think it's going to be the last question. Hopefully we can get some questions from the audience, one or two after that. And that is, are there any non-financial applications that you see in the near future which we can expect to be utilizing interoperability in the blockchain space?
Please, Ian.
Okay. I have one in mind. I'm sure some of you have the same unfortunate experience I did. I had one time I went to Paris and Air France. I traveled from New York to Paris, and they lost my luggage. Now, for them to find my luggage, where did it lost? They took them 2 or 3 days. I have a business meeting. You can go and buy underwears, not a problem, but you cannot buy a suit that will fit you. You will not buy a shirt that will fit you. So what do? You have no choice, but you wear a funny suit to a business meeting, and people say, "What's wrong with you?" I was younger then, and I was really embarrassed. Now maybe I'm not embarrassed. So there's an issue of luggage, baggage claim all over the world. And none of the airports, New York Airport will not subservient to Heathrow Airport. Heathrow Airport will not subservient to Beijing Airport, and Singapore Airport, and Hong Kong Airport, and Tokyo Airport. So they all must be peers. And they all have their own database systems. And they are not necessarily sharing the same database system. And they don't want to share data with you. Only when you have a claim, they will share data with you. They will not share data with you on everything. So the sharing data only trigger on the need. Now all this make interoperable very important because you have different airports. They will not subservient to the other, and they have different database systems. They have different system, internal operating system, operating procedures. So if you want to make this uniform, everybody can get to where you lost the luggage. Is it in the Hong Kong airport, or is it in the Paris airport, or is it the airline? And all this has to be interoperable. And this is just one application.
So the question was non-financial use cases that will leverage
Or
interoperability,
application,
right?
Yeah, in the near future.
I absolutely have a very strong view about this. You know, one of our advisors, our angel investor, literally the guy that wrote us the first check, very, very successful entrepreneur, and he's senior to me. My polite way to say he's a bit older, and he reminds me that if you were raising venture capital in Silicon Valley in 1990, and you went to any of the big offices and you were talking about what you're going to build on the internet, you would pitch, and then the VCs would go, great, you're talking about the internet, but you actually mean email, right? Because they couldn't see how the internet would ever be good for anything besides email. That was the killer app. And I feel like that's where we are today with, just trading and hedging and all these pure financial kind of applications that kind of just use the blockchain as a rail, sometimes for settlement, sometimes for the order making itself. The future is much more robust in terms of the use case that this technology facilitates. And I'm a profound believer in that. So to Alex's original question, what I'm already seeing in enterprise, large kind of bodies that are working with this, is they're more comfortable running permissioned blockchains around a use case, maybe around an industry. Maybe it's shipping, maybe it's supply chain, maybe it's manufacturing. The crux, however, where this becomes really interesting is when you're thinking about where the value of blockchain is. Blockchain is not a platform, it's a network. There is a profound difference. Network needs to grow organically and only be capped by what you could do on it. The point I'm making, I guess, is we're going to see these large blockchains converting industries, but they're going to convert around specific verticals. The real value happens when those different chains could actually interoperate. So if I'm doing supply chain or manufacturing, I can now actually trigger events on insurance chains. I could do payment chains. That's where we'll see big convergence into this industry. And that absolutely hinges on us being able to solve interoperability and do it right.
Yeah, and I personally, I got a flight a couple last month, and I didn't know it, but the travel agent got me one of those flights where it was really cheap, but you were supposed to get off early and things like that, and the airline took 180,000 frequent flyer miles, and it's interesting because there's this sort of plausible deniability with everything because airlines are like banks. There's the laws are international and everything. So the airline can kind of do whatever they want, and I think frequent flyer miles is one very very good case where probably some disruption could occur with interoperability. And another one, maybe, I don't know, probably not with public chains, is healthcare. I have a daughter. She's 8 months old, but last year when she was born, she had a fever, so they took her to NICU. And there was this problem because the NICU doctor said, oh, we can't do this with your baby until the mom's doctor says it's okay. And then I go to the mom's doctor, and the mom's doctor says, okay, we can't do anything until the baby's doctor says it's okay. And as a consumer, I have no insight into what's going on or the process. And I don't think that blockchain can help there, but at a macro scale, maybe with pharmacy prescriptions and supply chain and things like that, I think that there's going to be cases where that communication across enterprises in a way that is transparent and can be publicly audited by a regulator is going to be really valuable. So I think we have time for one question, if that's one or two. We've got a couple minutes. Is there a microphone, or should we just shout it out? Yeah. Does anybody have a question? There's a microphone over here. All right.
Question?
Oh, we've got one question.
So the value of the blockchain is the interaction. You said that's going to be the more. That's my question. That's going to be the adding more value, like atomic swap, and I was a little bit confused about the railroad and train, and atomic swap are two different things.
Yeah, so the atomic thing, there's not a really good example with trains and an atomic swap, but briefly, an example is if you have this box, and on the left side there's a lock and you can put something in it, and on the right side there's a lock and you can put something in it, and after you put something in both sides, and there's two keys, so you put something in both sides, and now now the key for the right side can open the left side, and the key for the left side can open the right side, and basically both parties can like trustworthy exchange the items in a trustworthy way. But if both items aren't put into the box, then the parties on both sides can get their item back. And
listen, I really think of kind of the abstract, and you tell me if it makes sense to you. We created blockchains because we wanted to decentralize trust and to be able to shift how we think about trust instead of between stakeholders, so you have to know me and trust me, to infrastructure. So we can now have a system that enforces the trust between us.
Yeah, because right now we have to go to banks or we have to go to someone else, and then they hold on to the money, and they also have like the permission to sort of make the money at the same time, and they're trusted to protect it. And so the same thing can be said about private information, like private medical information. The insurance providers have access to all of your data because they say that they need it for actuarial purposes, to know how much to charge for your insurance, but then you don't get access to that information, and the doctors don't. And so, if we don't need a box, another party to hold on to that data or that value, and we can do that digitally with a blockchain, then those kinds of interactions where we don't need that.
Yeah.
And
maybe we
anymore.
could close
That's where the
on
value
that,
is.
I think. Like, one of the biggest fallacies of our industry today is we tell you, have Bitcoin, purely digital, purely decentralized, and have Ether, purely digital and purely decentralized. But if you want to go between, we force you. We literally are forcing you to go from on-chain to off-chain to on-chain again. It makes no sense. It breaks the model.
Yeah. Briefly?
I just want to bring up something for your thoughts. Distribute trust is not necessarily good. When you distribute your trust or your data to unknown parties, in a commercial business, you raise an issue. There's an issue called trade secret. And do you really send somebody your trade secrets to unknown parties? You don't even trust to send it to known parties. So there are issues there. As a blind trust and then distributed to everyone, to unknown parties, that is really not good for commercial application. For your personal application, you can do whatever you want. You don't have any trade secret, so you can share with the world. But if you're doing a real business, don't you care about those things? Just for your thoughts.
Great.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, those are great answers.
Yeah,
like,
thanks
really
so
balanced,
much.
so.
It was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you all for
Cheers.
attending the conference. I guess we have one more quick question. All right.
Cool. Thank you for getting up there, guys. The train metaphor was great, right? But my question is where do you see the trend of developer adoption going, and how do we get more developers to be on board with this interoperability, right? Especially when, as a developer, you're a champion, right?
Yeah.
I'm an Ethereum developer. I'm a Neo developer. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So this is totally your ball, right?
Yeah. So my thoughts are like pay attention to cryptography and the tools being developed to help us build those applications. And I think it's going to be one of those things where like it's going to take some time, and then we're going to hit critical mass, and that critical mass is probably going to have to do with security. So on the one hand, if like all we were doing is like working with video games, we can like kind of do whatever we want. But to move people's like money onto the blockchain or like health insurance companies to switch over to, like, we really need, actually that security needs to be exponentially more secure than what we rely on today. And we also need to figure out, like as Ian was saying, if we do build this thing, like we do need to have people in place, because there are things where it's still important to have people there. So for developers, like I said before, there's that middleware, and we need to figure that out. And I think that's going to result in some really, really awesome tools for enterprises and consumers. So focus on the tools. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Well, I think we're good. Thank you for coming to Hong Kong Blockchain Week, and thank you for coming to Hong Kong. Yeah, hope to see everyone again.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Fun.
Thank you so much, everybody.